A wholly unsolicited letter from the seer Ione Marchese to Hewler Silverfox, Chancellor of the Grey College, City of Greyhawk. When interpreting a vision, I look for 7 things. I always look for 7 because I believe 7 to be the proper number in matters of the arcane. Here are 7 things. Firstly, a field, green only at the edges, otherwise golden, with tall, dry grasses that hiss and shiver when the wind comes through. The smell is crisp, but loamy, a reminder that beneath it all the earth is slumbering. Overhead a hawk circles. Secondly, the weight of obligation which I feel towards my mother. She was a distant woman, resentful of us, and never afraid to say it. I carry this weight with me always, and I find it sometimes affects my interactions with others, particularly older women. Thirdly, the inexorable march of time. Fourthly, a blackbird. Fifthly, a coin of gold in the pocket of a gnomish child, intended for the purchase of some candy and a bushel of apples. The coin was given to the child by his older sister, who received it as part of her wages as a seamstress from a man whose coat needed mending. The coat was damaged in a duel with the gentleman's brother, over which he would later come to realize was a tragic misunderstanding. Sixthly, a list of 7 things. And seventhly, a lock of blonde hair, kept as a remembrance by a man undertaking a long and potentially disastrous voyage across the sea. I hope this helps you in your studies. Should you have any need of my further services in this or any regard, I may be reached at my shop near the southern edge of the marketplace, where I offer readings, interpretations, and fine teas. Yours, Ione Marchese, seer and interpreter of signs.
In the city of Greyhawk, 5 individuals are united by circumstance. A brewer priest, a haunted swordsman, a living relic, a caustic criminal, and a golem without a past. With the drawing of a single card, their lives have been turned upside down. Welcome to The Chimera, a role-playing adventure podcast. Our campaign this season is called Misplaced. It takes place in the venerable setting of Greyhawk, kind of, and we're playing with a modified version of 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons. I'm Vin LeBate, and I play Goldeneye Drakashi, a Dragonborn rogue. Joining me today are...
I'm Braden Lamb, and I'm playing Balmo, a halfling cleric.
I'm Jeffrey Bard, and I play Sir Simeon, the human sword mage.
I'm Josh Hallbachner, and I play Ashlar, a warforged sorcerer.
I'm Kacey Smith, and I play Latchkey, a shardmind with the dual classes of Battlemind and Scion.
And I'm Kelly Weissman Asprooth Jackson, the Dungeon Master.
Now, let's get started.
All right. Welcome back, friends, to The Chimera. When last we left our intrepid band of not exactly adventurers, they were stranded in a place on a beach. They were resolving all of the issue of the fact that they had all these dead bodies to deal with. They have one surviving body besides themselves, and they were going to spend some time figuring out what to do. So, Braden, remind me. Oh,
I just want to check.
Yes,
is it really considered a big problem that we have all these bodies? Because I'm pretty sure I have a universal solution for that.
Oh, God.
Well, I was about to ask Braden. I think he was sort of administering sort of like death rites to each of the members of the crew and the other passengers, I believe, when we closed last time. Does he have a position on burial versus cremation?
I think I would say cremation, although I did want to make sure that I have... Well, I didn't specifically pick rituals, but I think one of them is gentle repose, which, if I understand, is make sure that diseases don't get spread by way of these bodies, and also B, they don't come back as skeletons.
I think you might have been gentle reposing when we left last week.
Yes, I believe you were. And we intentionally have left rituals nebulous because they're meant to be out of combat actions for the most part, and so that's why you haven't picked them. You weren't supposed to pick them, so you're good there. So you were gentle reposing last week, but I'm just curious to know if we're going to have to dig a bunch of holes, or if, as Josh has implied, Ash can take care of the situation rather swiftly.
Yeah, I think cremation would be the best. Balmo's probably a pretty fastidious guy. As a beer brewer, you have to try to avoid outside contaminants, and I think that's kind of his position on most things is cleanliness is next to godliness.
Okay, so there will be
also the 5-second rule.
Also the 5-second. We will have a series then of brief and fiery funerals, by the end of which we should be reaching sunset. And the sun does set over the water from the perspective of the beach. So looking out from the beach, it's setting in front of you, not behind you over the trees, which tells you at least something about the orientation, at least for this particular sun. Not that I'm making any promises about which sun this is. So once that has been seen to, again, remember, you do have this surviving NPC, Demertha Ophaly, the somewhat pietistic passenger from the ship who earlier asked Brother Balmo to conduct a worship service before all this happened. She's still around and, of course, very upset, sort of alternating between being very quiet and crying and trying to find a way that she can be helpful, and then sort of vacillating between those 3 points. But now the sun is setting and the immediate work is done, so y'all can spend a little time figuring out what's going to happen next.
So Rakashi has definitely not been helping with any of that at all. She's probably been trying to set up like a smallish campsite, like gathering some wood just like for a fire for the evening, sort of around the tree line probably, and waiting very impatiently for everyone else to finish up their shit.
Okay, so Rakashi's been collecting wood. She does still have that satchel. Remember,
yeah, I'm probably also gonna paw through that.
Okay, you want an inventory then?
Yeah.
So the satchel that Rakashi gathered from the ship. Remember that her rod that she carries with her would not allow her really to leave without it. Essentially, like it wouldn't go further, and then it sort of tugged in the direction that led her to this bag. It's a fairly standard, like an adventurer's pack, or in this case, a sailor's one. It was found in the crew quarters. That was very clear. It's not necessarily obvious whose it is when it's in the crew quarters. So it has a few precious-looking items on the inside of it. There's a lock of someone's hair in a glass case. There's a tarnished silver snuff box, empty. And there is one personal journal. And then there's like a layer of clothes. And then at the bottom of the layer of clothes, like someone was trying to keep something hidden in a cursory way, there's a different journal. And wrapped up in a somewhat filthy shirt, there is another metal rod.
Huh.
Oh, they're friends.
Yeah, do the rods react to each other at all?
So, handling the second rod, now remember the first rod that Rakashi has says on it, rod.
Yeah.
Right? This one...
Maybe we should describe the rod.
Sure. So, do you want to do that?
Yeah, it's like a foot longish, sort of like just cylindrical, not particularly interesting looking rod. It's got engravings on it, but they don't seem to really jump out, but in the sort of towards the center of it, there's a little like blank area that just says rod.
So the one from the bag that was sort of hidden, again, not like wasn't like hidden well, but like in, maybe you're trying to stuff something somewhere where someone isn't going to easily find it if they go through your things, is a rod that matches that description quite well. It's the same measurements, seems to be the same sort of metal. It has similar patterning on it. And again, there is an empty space on it, but the empty space just says "the."
Oh my god.
Huh.
Not Todd.
Oh, I'm really torn right now. I will probably attempt to activate it. Like, I will attempt the sort of same activation function and see if it does anything.
Oh, the same one that you would do for the rod, the original one.
Yeah, which I think she probably eventually figured out just by, like, poking at it every day for 6 months.
Yeah, so if you hold it out in space, and I've been assuming there's like a button you press.
Yeah, I think it's sort of like a recessed sort of like, it's like a child-proof cap where like,
yes,
it's not a complex function, but if you don't know how to do it, you can't do it.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the lock on a carabiner that one might use for mountain climbing. It's a similar, so it's basically the same idea. You have to sort of twist and press at the same time.
Yep.
If you don't know what to do, it's not going to do it. So you just hold it out in space and you do that, and it has exactly the same function. It just sits there still. It's can't push it, can't pull it. It's fixed point in space.
Okay. Guess I have two now. That goes directly into my bag. And then I'm going to start poking through the journals.
So do you ever look at the two rods at the same time?
Probably.
Okay, so having tested them and then getting the other rod out to compare, there's a strong attraction to them, like two things that are magnetized, or rather that are magnetized in a complementary way, right?
Yep. Well, I'll figure out how to deal with those later. Yeah, I'm going to see if I can figure out whose pack this was based on the journals. Okay,
so the journal that was at the top level is it's clear who it was because it's got. Is it clear? I mean, yeah, it's clear enough. You can figure out that it was definitely Redigant Weemsmackle, the first mate.
Mm-hmm.
This was his journal. It has not been in use for very long. It doesn't have a lot of entries. It's a full size journal, but it's mostly empty.
Yep.
And it's clear from it. The same thing that he mentioned just before he was eaten is mentioned there. It alludes to, not in any detail, the fact that he works for this organization called the Chimera Project. He has orders, again, not recounted in any detail in the journal, but which he's torn about. It's a big undertaking. He's worried about whether or not it'll involve hurting his friends. But he also doesn't seem to feel like he has any way around following the instructions. The orders definitely involve the ship and taking it to the right place at the right time so that he can get where he's going. He doesn't provide a lot of detail, and he clearly seems to be avoiding using things like proper names in an effort to not make it terribly useful if this falls in the wrong hands. But pretty much you can piece together the idea that he is somehow responsible or part of an intentional strategy of getting the ship here. That seems pretty clear from the journal.
Mm. And the other one?
The other one is the journal of Bechamel Brattlewaite, the Eladrin.
Huh.
And that journal is a very specific, it's not just like general, it is specifically his notes on the rod.
I'm going to put Bechamel's journal in my bag for later, and then probably put the rest of this stuff down and get back to work getting a fire lit the old-fashioned way.
Okay. As you put the two rods down,
mm-hmm.
they are close enough together that the natural attraction will draw them into alignment with each other, and the two ends snap together. So now it says the rod.
Yeah, she sort of takes a long look at that and is like, I'm going to deal with this later.
Okay. Anybody else, things that you're doing before we have our little conference?
I think Latchy is going to try to do a ritual to locate the ring.
Sure.
So they're going to kind of sit themselves in the space where the froggy myth exploded. Or combusted, I suppose. And they're going to do a seeking ritual, which essentially what this one kind of looks like is Latchy kind of sits in like a meditative stance, sort of cross-legged, with one hand resting on the sand. And all of them is composed of these, collection of little pieces of crystal, which is sort of hard to tell when they're moving around because they all fit together very precisely. But as their hand rests on the sand, the crystals begin to kind of move apart from one another and just burrow into the sand and spread out. And this only happens up to about their wrist. But it's basically like all of these little pieces are investigating the sand that takes up the space of the known explosion to try and detect this ring.
So you're sending your hand out to look for it.
Yeah. There's some repetition here.
Okay. Why don't you give me an Arcana check, please?
Okay. I have an Arcana of 12. My total is 19.
Okay. So it takes a little while, and there's a long pause as the little crystal bits churn about underneath the sand, and it moves around. The sand moves sort of a little bit undular as they're tilling it up. But eventually the movement stops, and there's a kind of a blinking over maybe 40 feet away from where Latchkey is. And then the undulating continues again as all the other bits gather around the blinky bit, and Latchkey's hand reforms and waits there for them to come retrieve it.
Okay. So they do that, and once their hand attaches, their fingers open, and I'm guessing the ring is in their palm.
There you go.
And can you describe it for me one more time?
Sure. It's made up of kind of a lacy woven strands of what appear at least to be gold. Or I'm sorry, this is not gold. This one is kind of a brass sort of color. And then at the top of it, or where there might be a gem on a given ring, is the head of a not exactly clear, some type of a horned animal like a goat or a ram. It's sort of hard to tell the difference when it's just the head.
And what the ring that Starcoat had, what did his look like in comparison?
So exactly the same sort of woven strands of metal for the band, gold instead of brass, and the head of a lion with a mane rather than of a goat or a ram.
And this one was bronze and goat-ish.
Yep.
Okay, so for now, they're going to put that in the pouch at their waist. They're not going to try and wear it. But I think that's all that Latchkey would do before kind of helping with what all else is going on that's more communal.
Very good. All right, so at the end of all of that, unless there's anything else somebody wants to do in preparation, you have a fire, the sun is setting, and now it's time to have a conversation on what's going to happen next. So, who would like to start us off?
Does anybody know where we are?
Bomo raises a hand tentatively. I'm sorry to say, my friends, we're in the 9th circle of the abyss. Was it the 9th?
Which one was it? Let's see. because this is a canonical thing, which is why I can't necessarily answer it easily. Gorgon, Abyss.
I feel like it was either 7 or 9.
88th.
The 88th?
layer.
Oh, I was way off.
Hell has circles. The Abyss has layers. So this is
Layers,
the 88th
okay.
circle of the Abyss.
There's
Or rather,
999 layers of the Abyss, right?
I believe that's right. Yes.
Is it worse the deeper in you go?
No, the layer assignments in the Abyss are arbitrary. The circles matter in Hell, but the point of the layering system in the Abyss is just to like freak you out with how big it is. That's really the only point of it.
They just all have different seed values.
How big and random. We're in the 88th level of the Abyss. It appears I have been naughty in the eyes of Wenta.
What?
What do you mean? What did you do, Ray?
It was... I'm not sure how, but I know why. I was not sufficiently pious. I treated the texts of my faith with an insufficient gravity. I'm not sure. I didn't conjure the doorway. I think that fault lays with our departed first mate. If I can guess. He opened the door, but I chose the destination.
Rakashi sort of opens her mouth once or twice during this, like trying to figure out if there is something that she should say, and then can't actually figure out what that would be and doesn't say anything.
While this is going on, I think Ash is like picking up like handfuls of sand or soil or whatever and kind of poking through it with, one finger. Kind of idly curious. Maybe after that, kind of turning and looking at some of the vegetation or whatever else is around.
Rakashi is also roasting a chunk of froghemoth.
Oh, it's gross, man.
But fear not, my friends. Fear not. I shall find a way out of this. I have brought you here. I shall deliver you from the Abyss.
Ash is going to lean over to Latchkey and whisper, "I don't think we're in the Abyss."
Kelly, is there a knowledge planes in D&D, or is that just under Arcana or Religion now?
Let's see. So the skill system in 4th is intentionally very vague, like a lot of the stuff in 4th, honestly. So you could make an Arcana roll, and that would be relevant to the question. You could make a Religion roll, and that would be relevant to the question. Those are probably the two that I'd allow. Maybe a history, depending.
Okay, then I'd like to do an Arcana check just to see if I can verify. Like, I haven't been off this or our plane or the. I mean, I've probably done our plane, the astral, and the ethereal, but I probably haven't done anything more than that.
Yeah, remember that in this setting, actually, it's called the Feywild.
The Feywild
is the thing that people might refer to as the ethereal plane.
Okay,
and the astral plane would be the astral sea, which is where the gods live. So basically, the plane system in 4th is greatly simplified, but then those planes are much more complicated. So the Feywild is like the magic-y, sort of hyper-real parallel to the regular world, and the Shadowfell is the dark, full of death and despair kind of parallel to the natural world. And then above it is the astral sea, where the gods live, and then below it is the elemental chaos, which is where the demons are and also where the elementals come from. That's the basic design of the cosmology in this setting. But so it would make sense that Sir Simeon might have had some experience with the Feywild and potentially the Shadowfell. It would be unusual for him to have touched the astral sea or the elemental chaos.
I'm used to teleportation going through astral or ethereal, so that would be. So I'm going to go ahead and use Words of Grace on that.
Okay.
Along with Memory of 1,000 Lifetimes.
Yep.
And I will roll. That'll be a 32.
Okay, so the question you are trying to answer is where does Sarsimian think we are, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm starting with Balmo's like assumption that it's the abyss, and it's like, are we in the abyss? And going from there.
The answer Sarsimian would take is that it seems unlikely that we would be in the abyss. In the abyss, you don't usually encounter anything closely resembling natural life forms. Everything is at least marginally twisted in a demonic direction. So the fact that we have what appear to be pretty conventional palm trees here, for instance, that just doesn't really track with Sarsimian's understanding of what you should expect in the abyss.
Okay. Are there like birds or anything?
Yeah, I mean, like I mentioned that there were some white shapes out at the tree line a couple episodes ago. That were probably some kind of a larger, most likely mammal, but it wasn't clear what they were. But yeah, they're like, especially as the sun is going down, you hear the night calls of birds. You see some of them fluttering around the tree heights, very far off. You haven't had a lot of conventional fauna anywhere nearby, but you can see evidence of it.
Okay. Balmo.
Yes.
You know, I don't know that we are in the abyss. I mean, you hear that? Like, those noises are not the noises of at least the 88th. I don't think we're where you think we are. And I don't think this is your fault.
I mean, did you see the frog thing? I certainly saw it.
I mean, yes, but I've seen plenty of other stranger things out in the... What is the world called? Is it actually called Greyhawk? It's Earth.
Orth is the name of the kind of planet.
Right.
The natural world is probably the preferred term for the plane that it is.
Okay.
You could also call it someone could call it the Flinnaeus just because that's what people are used to talking about. That's the landmass, but you probably wouldn't because you're not from there.
Right. I mean, I've seen stranger things out there on Earth. That doesn't... One example of strangeness doesn't mean necessarily that we're on the abyss. And listen to those sounds, right? Those are the sounds of nature. Those are not the sounds of horror. I think we're okay.
Okay is an interesting way to put it.
Well, we're not dead.
But, I mean, I hit it with my tap handle, and it damaged it severely. He holds up his tap handle and shakes it in Sarsimian's face. This is not a very good weapon, except against demons and other I'm not sure what you would call them, things that are not native to the natural plane.
Well, I mean, like I said, we're definitely not anywhere I know of, right? But I mean, we've got a sun. That sun looks pretty familiar. It's setting in a place that I would call the West, right? I think we're okay. This is all way too normal to be the abyss. I say normal in quotes, air quotes.
Yeah, Rakashi is chewing loudly on a chunk of frog monster.
Sarsimian is trying not to look at him.
Well.
Or her, sorry.
Lashy considers and says, would a demon be edible?
I mean, I have found historically that a lot of things that I consider edible, these guys don't consider edible. So it's really a matter of perspective, I think.
Oh, are demons edible? You know who would know is Darbin Tolric, my friend. He would know. He'd have a better idea where we are, judging by the fauna and the edibility thereof.
For the time being, we may want to spend a little less time considering where exactly we are and a little more considering where we can travel to from here to pursue any of our various goals, like getting out. I don't think anything remains of the ship that we can really make good use of, so probably our best shot is to see if we can find some other form of civilization.
So the ship is definitely not sailable, right? Barring a really big construction effort and probably a hefty amount of magic. But the ship was large enough that it did have a longboat, not a longboat in the Viking sense, but it's basically like a long rowboat used as a landing craft from larger vessels in this sort of this period of sail technology. So you do have something you could put out to sea in. It's not something you could get very far on the open sea in, but you could certainly use it to get to some of the other land masses you can see from where you are.
Gotcha. How big does it seem like the landmass we're on is?
That's tough to say without more exploration. If you want to walk along the beach or even go out in the boat and try to go around it, you could make a guess, but it's deep enough from where you are near a point where it seems like the coastline turns. So it doesn't just go on and on forever. Like it seems like if you go far enough north or north-ish from where you are, north relative to the sunset at least, it seems like there's a turn in the coast, and so perhaps that's a turn around the whole of the island. Perhaps it's just, a little bit of a divot and then it keeps going. I can't really tell from here. But straight ahead into the trees, it just goes for a while. It's hard to tell what the depth is.
Okay, so big enough that we can't identify the shape or form of where we are from our current vantage point. And
not from sitting on the beach, no.
And how big would we estimate the other like islands or whatever we can see from here are?
So there's this, what I've been referring to as the big island, or at least a large peninsula, that's pretty much due north from where you are. That is large enough that it is not clear if it has an ending or not, right? Okay. That could be the end of a continent, or it could just be a very large island. There are some more land masses off to the west that appear to be separate islands, but it's hard to tell at this level of elevation. It'd be hard to say for sure if they're islands or if they're bits of a jagged coastline, right?
Okay, so we could have anything from an archipelago with a few particularly large islands and then a bunch of smaller outlying ones to basically like a large bay potentially on like what could even be like a continent shore.
Potentially.
Depending on how the information outside of our direct view plays out. Okay.
Before the eruption of the creature out of the water, we did spy a strange form, humanoid in appearance, on a mountaintop, and it flew after the battle in the direction of, it was like towards the interior, right, Kelly?
Yes, it went towards the interior of the large landmass that has the giant volcanic plateau on it.
Okay. So and that's a different island, or that's our island?
That appears from where you are to be separated by the water. Again, okay. If you turn the corner, maybe there's something over there that connects it. But from right now, it appears to be a separate landmass.
And that figure traveled towards where that large volcano rests. It may be worthwhile exploring that area. If there's one life form there may be others.
What was this person or thing doing?
It seemed to be observing us, and it was in a strange manner of what we would describe as armor. It was reflective from a helmet that completely obscured the face down to its feet, though there seemed to be a odd sort of flexibility about it that we have not seen in other types of armor.
Given Latchkey's telepathic ability, I'm pretty sure that they could share the image of it with the rest of the party if they wanted to.
Okay. Well, then they'll do that because that's expedient.
Okay, so just as a reminder, it's a silvery sort of, what looks sort of like a suit of armor in that it's bulky, but then it also moves in a very fluid way, like it's bulky, but it's also sort of like cloth. It's very shiny, and the helmet is just this featureless golden sphere, also very shiny, that fits atop the rest of the suit.
And it does look like there's something vaguely approximating a humanoid body inside that. It doesn't look like it's just cloth hanging off of the sphere.
Oh yeah, I mean it's shaped like a four-limbed humanoid. It moves like a four-limbed humanoid. There's always the possibility that there's something else inside, but to all extents and purposes.
So it's a flying humanoid in a haute couture outfit.
With a Mysterio helmet.
I keep
Yes.
picturing like Dead Mouse.
I'm kind of imagining like an astronaut, actually, is sort of like the image I'm getting.
And then it had something on its back that was like a large metal and glass canister, and it flew up into the air trailing fire and smoke.
Wow.
Oh, that moves us a little more towards astronaut. Or jetpack man.
Rocketeer.
This is going to get real weird, isn't it?
I will admit that does not seem very abyssal.
Okay, so after considering the kind of imagery for a moment, Ash is going to kind of look around a little bit and say, so I think pretty clearly we have some options taking back to the water, but that commits us to a course of action. I'd like to suggest that we pick some amount of time to explore the local area here where we've landed, get a sense if there's anything useful we can find here, and then if we're going to try to take out the boat, make a decision then. Ash is kind of looking at all of this through a lens that he's familiar with, which is basically like scavenging for useful objects.
Given that the sun is going down, I don't disagree with that at all. We should probably give ourselves a little shelter, take the night to think about things, and then we can start checking out this area in the morning. One thing I do agree with Balmo, I think we're here for a reason.
Well, someone brought us here on purpose. She just tosses the journal over to Sir Simeon.
Sir Simeon catches it. What? Whose is this?
The first mate.
He starts paging through it. Huh. Why did he want to bring the boat here? Is there something else on it that he is delivering, or was he delivering us?
The journal doesn't make that clear, but it does make it clear that he was under orders to get the boat here, or rather to get the boat to a certain place in the water at a certain time. He had a scroll, a magical scroll he had to read surreptitiously. That seems to be connected to the storm that came up. And then he was supposed to steer towards a tower with a strange beacon at the top of it. And that in doing so, he would arrive at the destination he was supposed to bring the ship to. And that's sort of where the orders end. They're just like, go this place and do this thing. There's no specific statement about exactly what is aboard the ship that needs to get there, but the instructions were definitely very clear that he wasn't to leave port until everything, all the passengers and all of the material that was on the ship's manifest was in place. And he was very worried about this. In fact, his last entry is after the ship had already hauled anchor, because they were behind the timetable. It had to wait for the last of the passengers, and so he was worried about not making his deadline to being into the let me get this right since it's a canonical thing, into the right section of water at the right time. Sorry, I'm just bringing up the map of Greyhawk here so I can give you the name of the body of water is Woolly Bay. Woolly Bay is the section of the sea that's south of Greyhawk once you go down the river to the mouth. So he needed to be in a certain part of Woolly Bay at a certain time in order to apparently summon this storm and then encounter the tower. And he was worried about the timetable in the last entry.
Well, he also had these things with him. And she puts... I feel like probably earlier she had taken Balmo's keg and sort of planted it in the ground and is now using it as sort of a table. So she puts down the lock of hair in the glass case and the snuff box. Yeah, so he had this junk, and he also had... She pauses for a second. Oh, he had this thing. And she pulls out the 2 rods. This one... And she pauses and turns it and checks to make sure it's the right one. This one is mine that I brought with me. And this one, I think, belonged to the blonde elfie guy who's dead now, so it's also mine. But The point is that I didn't bring this one.
So just so we're clear, these two rods are now fused together. They're one rod.
Oh, they're stuck.
They're stuck. Oh, yeah. You can't disconnect them. At least you haven't figured out a way to yet.
They're the rod. It says so.
Yeah, she is just now realizing that. And it's like, okay, all right, now it's one rod.
Maybe look at that. Latchkey holds out their hand.
Okay. She passes it over.
So they're just going to kind of turn it around and see if they can see a place where the two rods actually connect, or if it just looks like one solid piece now.
So, yeah, they definitely... It's like there's a complicated locking mechanism at both ends of each rod, and they are now latched together. I mean, there's seams. It's not like they look fused.
Right.
But they also don't come apart in any obvious way.
So the other thing they want to check is, so they're in the order of V and then rod, right, is what it says.
Right, and the people who in the party who can speak supernal, who I think that's just Balmo. Just looking at it, it's actually written in supernal.
Oh, okay.
Right? When you read written supernal and you don't speak supernal, it just appears in your native language. But that's not what... It doesn't actually say the rod in common. It says the rod in supernal.
Okay. So the other thing Lashy sort of wants to plot is whether the top of the first rod, the rod that says the, looks the same as the bottom of the second rod, the rod that says rod. So like there was a mechanism that attached the two of them, right? So presumably there was something on either end of them that now if you could pull them apart, you'd be like, oh, that's how they went together.
Interesting.
That kind of
So
makes
like,
sense.
does this look like the beginning of a phrase or the end or the middle?
Right. Like, does the top of the look like it's got a piece that would attach to something? And does the bottom of the rod look like that piece is also ready to attach to something?
Yes, they both have connecty bits at both ends.
Okay.
Let's see, diplomacy and engineering. This examination feels like it makes sense as a dungeoneering check.
Okay.
Can you roll that for me?
Yeah. Dungeoneering.
Do I see her kind of using that?
Them, remember.
Them,
Lasky
sorry.
is a plural.
Them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, this is all in front of everybody else. I don't think anything's secret here.
So I point out a few things that I notice, like as they are looking at it, and just some like small words of encouragement, and give them a +5 to that roll.
Oh, +5. Oh, that's nice. So what did you roll, Kacey?
I got a 9 total. So
+5 is 14.
Yeah.
That's still not very good. So what you can tell just from looking at it, this is not ambiguous, that there are what looked sort of like they could be decorative, but now that you have it in context, appear to be some kind of like latching mechanisms.
Right.
At the end of both rods. Are they the same? You didn't roll well enough to figure that out.
Okay.
Is the answer.
Gotcha.
Which doesn't mean you get the wrong answer. It just means you can't tell.
You don't know. Okay. All right. So Lashy will hand the rod back to Rikashi. Have they ever seen Rikashi like fiddling with their rod? That came out weird.
It's just gonna get worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've probably seen it like around once or twice. You probably haven't ever seen her use it.
Okay. What is the function of this object?
It does nothing. Here, I'll show you. So she puts it on top of the keg. And she's like, okay, so right now it's not doing anything, right? She sort of pokes it and rolls it around a bit. So if I do this, and she sort of reaches out and like twists the end in a really particular way, now it does less than nothing.
So when she twists it in that really particular way, I assume the end is she's using, because now she effectively has two switches, right? She has the one on the rod marked V and the one on the rod marked rod. So she uses, I assume, the one on the rod marked rod?
Yes.
When she twists that, the immediate area goes completely dark and silent from the perspective of everyone around her. Rikashi can still see and still hear, but there's there's both a tone in the background and a dimming that's suggestive of what's happening for everybody else. But everybody else can't see or hear right now.
Like at all?
At all.
Blind and deaf.
Blind and deaf.
Okay.
I turn it back off.
Everybody can see and hear again.
That was indeed
Whoa, what
a
was that?
significantly greater amount of nothing.
That's not what it did before. Huh.
What did it do before?
It doesn't move. You can put it somewhere and it won't move. Even if it's not on the ground, it'll just stay there.
Like a rod of obstinacy?
That's a good name for it. I'm going to call it that from now on.
But now it takes away sight and sound?
Yeah. She activates the other end.
Activating the other end, it just holds there in midair.
Oh, okay. This is the thing that it's supposed to do.
So Simeon tries grabbing it and moving it.
Nope. It is perfectly fixed.
Like, he uses all of his strength to pull it.
Right, so he just ends up pulling himself up.
Oh, that's cool.
Right?
I can see how that would be really useful.
It has been. She turns it back off.
Belmo gives her the side eye. Useful for what?
Oh, you know, climbing things, securing things,
Right.
generally causing trouble.
Getting into places you're not supposed to be.
I've never had trouble getting into places I'm not supposed to be.
So wait, can you activate it with one hand?
Yes, with a lot of practice.
Okay.
So seeing as it's written in Supernal, Belmo's going to start sort of combing his memory, maybe start looking through his scriptures, if need be, for any mention of a rod or the rod.
That feels like another religion check to me.
Okay. Let's see if
Let's
this one
go.
does better. No. How's it go? /R.
Yeah, now that it's all come up again, Rakashi's going to pull out the other journal and sort of lay that out for everyone to look at.
Okay, that's a little bit better. 22.
22. All right. So you are thumbing through the same book that you were reading aloud on the ship, which is the account of the Dawn War.
Mm-hmm.
And in that book, it mentions something called the Rod of Seven Parts.
Uh-huh. Okay. Belmo puts his finger on it. My guess is there are one or more parts among these islands.
Huh.
Possibly as many as 5 more.
Seems cumbersome.
Do you think that's what the first mate wanted?
The asymmetry here confounds me. The rod of 7 parts is 5 words and 6 syllables.
But the original inscription in Supernal reads, "This is the rod of 7 parts."
This song is just 6 words long.
Is there anything about what this rod purportedly does or was used for, or why was it part? What was its significance in this scripture?
It was created by the Wind Dukes of Akka, who were the primary followers of the now lost god of law, Haramathur.
This guy.
That's the Chimera guy.
And that it was created, it was integral in the victory of the gods over the primordials, but that's the only thing that it says. It's not something that, it's a minor, this is like something that's mentioned in essentially one psalm, basically. You don't have a lot of details.
Mm-hmm.
This seems a significant coincidence.
Doesn't it, though?
Yeah, we seem to have a lot of those. Is there anything in Bechamel's journal?
The stuff in Bechamel's journal is all just stuff about him trying to figure out what it does. He's confident that it's magical. He thinks that it's connected somehow. It seems to be like part of something larger. He has a definite sense of that. And it's only the last couple of entries that he figured out the thing about making it hold still in space. But other than that, that's all he got.
I figured that out. Is there any indication of where he got it?
Where did he get it? Let me see. He bought it in a shop in the Feywild. So not in the natural world, but he bought it from a dealer in strange items and curiosities. A gnome, actually.
Does it say what whimsical price he paid for it? Like a song or his firstborn?
Yeah, I'm gonna say that Bechamel paid. I think it cost him his voice for a week, and the ability to smell his mother's cooking.
Wow.
Oh, that's so sad.
What can I say? Bechamel's a dutiful student of the arcane arts. He's willing to give up a lot in order to learn something new or gain something powerful.
Is there anything inside the little snuff box?
It is empty.
And
Although there's a little bit of residue that suggests it did at one point hold snuff.
And the lock of hair in the glass case, can you describe what the lock looks like?
Yeah, it's been it's a bit of yellow brown hair, right? It's been tied in a knot so that the strands sort of stay together.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost certainly human, halfling, or elven. Most dwarf hair is coarser than this, so you would suspect that it's one of the either Eladrin, elven, halfling, or human would be the most likely types of humanoids to have this color and texture of hair.
Okay.
It's not terribly different in tone or shade from Redigant Weemsmackle's hair color, although it does not necessarily his hair. In fact, his hair was a little bit curly in a way this hair isn't.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
So the rod was Bechamel's, but it was in Redigant's bag.
Yep.
So what was Redigant doing with it? Why did he... So he stole it.
That is a likely conclusion from the facts and evidence, yes.
And were they who was Bechamel was traveling with one of the other... Two of them were like going to be adventurers.
That's right. That was Bechamel and Doldrick. Let me be his last name. Doldrick Woolerand.
Okay. Rikashi, where did you find your rod?
Okay. So do you know, outside of town, like a little ways out, there's that big mansion that no one's lived in for a few years now?
We have observed that mansion, yes.
So that mansion used to belong to a wizard. And he used to, place some orders with the Nenshin Syndicate, and we would bring him some weird crap, and he would pay us some money. And, the usual sort of arrangement for a sketchy-ass wizard. And so, at one point, we realized that he had stopped paying his bills. So, a few of us went out there to knock on the door and knock on whatever else we need to knock on. But he was dead. So we gathered up a proper amount of payment. And also I found this thing and I figured he's not going to use it. So it's mine now. And now it's mine. End of story.
Dead in what manner?
It's hard to tell with wizards. It wasn't like a big bloody mess. So it could be maybe he had a heart attack, or it could be maybe he cursed his ass to death. I'm not a coroner.
And who was this wizard?
Alhamazad the Wise?
Oh. We've seen correspondences between him and Starcode.
Yeah, these wizards all talk to each other.
Yes, Warren's definitely mentioned him more than once to Latchkey. This is like, his local frenemy.
Mm-hmm. How long ago was he found dead?
couple years, I want to say. 3 years? A couple of 3 years.
Okay. So given that timeline, he would have been mentioned in the past tense to Latchkey, but he still would have been mentioned.
Okay.
All right. Are we ready to... So we've discussed plans for after sleeping the night. We're going to explore the island a little bit, and then maybe, depending on what we find, press on to other points beyond. But is there anything else we want to do before turning in?
Based on what we've just discovered, probably we also want to give the ship a hard once-over first.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But that's another morning task, I think.
Agreed.
Perhaps it would be advisable to have someone keep watch, considering at least one individual wanted the ship and potentially us here, and we do not know why.
Don't you not sleep?
We function better if we have a time of resting, but we can remain conscious throughout the night.
Don't worry. I've got your back during that time.
Great. You guys can split up the watches. I'm going to sleep.
I'll take first watch. Yeah. Does the ship, or what's remaining of the ship, seem pretty well beached? Like if the tide came in?
It's thoroughly stuck there.
Okay.
It doesn't seem like there's too much danger. It might, if the tide comes in significantly higher than it is now, and it's still kind of hard to say where it is relative to its norm. The bigger fear would be that it would flood in the lower decks.
Okay.
Right? Because it's basically there's a big hole in the side of it up at the front, so if the water level goes above that level, it'll slosh back into the body of the vessel.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I'll take first watch.
All right. So in the evening, watch order is going to be Sar Simeon, and then
probably Latchkey.
Okay.
I just want to point out, though it hasn't been mentioned yet, Josh, does Ash sleep?
I was actually trying to remember what we established about that.
It'll be, let me see.
I feel like it was no.
The answer is if Ash doesn't sleep, it is on the list of racial abilities. The only things that are different from everything that is different from normal is on the list. So let's see.
Oh yes, living construct does not sleep.
Yep.
Okay.
Does not sleep.
So yeah, so I can just do watch then.
Okay, so Ash will take all the watches then.
Sir Simeon will still do a watch. He just needs to.
Yeah, that's fine.
But he'll do it with Ash.
Belmo definitely feels compelled to take one of the watches.
Or
to share.
I think that's probably better, honestly, if we have two people, if we can manage it, one rotating slot, and then Asher doesn't have to sleep. If Sir Simeon is up first, know any good card games?
Unfortunately, I only have one card left.
So it would actually, even a cursory exploration of the ship, like back to the crew quarters or back to the deck of playing cards for Three Dragon Ante is as common as a conventional deck of playing cards is in the actual world. So it's not hard for you to find another copy of a Three Dragon Ante deck. This probably won't be as new, so it won't have Callista as the princess of the East, but it will have a Chimera card in it.
No.
Absolutely.
And it looks
any copy that you can find on yes, exactly. Yes.
And normally that card would never be effective.
It's not a card. Not a thing. It's like drawing the Shogun card.
Is it replacing something, or is the deck one larger than normal?
The deck is one larger than normal.
Okay.
Yeah, because you said it was a peer of the Necro Dragon or Shadow Dragon.
The Dracolich.
Dracolich, yeah. Yeah, so we'll play some cards.
I'll take the deck. Ash is surprisingly decent at shuffling for somebody with a reduced amount of fingers. But he'll also take the Chimera card out and, I don't know, like prop it up on a log somewhere, I guess.
Does he sort the cards in his mouth like Bender?
God, oh jeez.
No, Bender.
Okay, so I just want to get the order of watches. It's Sar Simeon first, and then Balmo, and then Latchkey, or then Latchkey and then Balmo.
Either way, I think
I'll
probably
take I'll take last.
Okay.
Okay, Bulma last.
One thing I do want to do is when it gets night, like just check out the stars, see if they're familiar stars or different stars.
Let's see. What are the stars like? What a good question, Jeff. So, does Sarsimian have any special relationship to the stars? I mean, does he have a... I can't think of anything obvious in his background.
Yeah, outside of just being a traveler, right? And, looking up the stars. Not really.
Okay.
Does he use them to, like, go from place to place?
In as much as anybody else does who is a traveler, right? Like,
Sure.
if you're taking the roads and stuff, you probably don't need Dead Reckoning or anything like that.
But he probably has, like, he knows where there's a northern... Whatever this setting's equivalent of a northern star is. It makes sense that he would know something.
So.
Wait, so do the stars... Do the stars match what we're used to?
That's what we're finding out.
Okay.
So...
Yeah, I wonder if ritual casters have a cursory knowledge of, what do you call them, constellations and whatnot.
It would really depend on the type of ritual caster.
Mm-hmm.
There are types of magery or other type spellcasters that are particularly interested in the stars and the constellations, but I don't think
right, like Starpack Warlocks.
That would be one very good example, but I don't think that any of you have anything that by default I would say is especially interested in the night sky.
That sounds right.
If you had a disagreement with me about that, I'd entertain it. I just think by default, I don't see anything in your character sheets that tells me you're particularly interested in the night sky.
Nah.
As on a magical level. I have to look at one more map. Excuse me for a second here. So, Sarsimian looks up at the stars, and they're... Okay, so Sarsimian has spent most of his time. He's traveled fairly far for someone of his era and location, like someone who's living most of their time in the Flaneus. He's traveled the entire width of the Flaneus before, plus some, because he's actually from the Backlinish Basin. So that's further east and west than most people get in their lifetimes. So it's like as a clip. Which one is that? That's longitude, right? Longitude is east and west?
Yeah.
It's long, yes.
Yeah, there you go. So his longitudinal frame of reference is pretty impressive for someone of his era. His latitudinal variation is pretty narrow, though, because especially the inhabited section of the Flaneus is in a pretty narrow band, which means that the stars look familiar but strange to him, because he has definitely never been this far off the latitudinal reference that he's used to.
So theoretically, then, it could be true either that these are a different height of the same sky or a completely different one. And we need more info to be certain?
You need more info to be real certain, but it would be... If this is a completely different set of stars that just happen to look similar to but different from the set of stars that you would be used to from the Flaneus, then man oh man, are the night skies in other planes boring.
Mm-hmm.
So Sarsimian's going to comment on this as he's playing with Ash. Just kind of puzzling over it, mulling over it. It's like, oh, that looks like that constellation, but that's totally in the wrong place. Like, and it's the wrong perspective and the wrong part of the sky, but really looks like that constellation. And just that's kind of how he talks with Ash.
Now Ash has been and spent significant amounts of sometimes in a completely different latitude than the Flaneus.
Right.
Do you think that Ash has any sense of what the night sky looks like?
I don't think he pays enough attention to make strong judgments.
It doesn't seem like something he'd care about. Yeah. Okay. Well, he has relevant experience, but not relevant knowledge. So I think sometimes that's just how it is. Anything else you want to establish during your watch?
Just how eerie it is to have that Chimera card just sitting looking at us.
Now, if you take the card out of the deck and play with it,
does it go back in?
Does it still show up?
No.
Okay.
Not as far as you can tell.
It's worth noting that now we have 2.
Mm-hmm.
If I see Sarsimian kind of like casting glances to it, without breaking, shuffling or whatever else I'm doing, I'm just going to see it is better to keep your enemies where you can see them.
I just don't understand, Ash. I have played this game probably thousands of times with hundreds of people, and I've never seen that card. And now it's everywhere? This doesn't make any sense.
Well, the decks on board the vessel could have all come from the same place. Maybe there's one town where they play it with slightly different rules.
It just doesn't seem to make sense.
It doesn't, does it?
All right, that's pretty much it.
Okay. So the second shift is Latchkey, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so when Sarsimian takes his shift, Latchkey goes over to sit down next to where Rakashi's gone to bed. And again, they kind of sit in that cross-legged kind of, maybe I'm meditating posture. And as they do this time, they've been glowing pink this whole time since they've gotten on the ship. So the pink glow just sort of dims until they're sort of a dull gray color throughout their body, but the crystal that was dull gray now starts to glow pink. So now each crystal is illuminated with a different color, and they're all kind of pulsing rhythmically, but now they're all pulsing the same rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
And something kind of happens to how Latchkey looks that's a little difficult to describe. So when they were alert and awake, there was, a symmetry and an elegance to them that made them look like they were very finely and intricately crafted. And now that they're inert, they look clunkier. Like there's sort of an unevenness to their the way the crystals fit together. One eye is just slightly higher than the other. The face just looks like someone made them who maybe didn't exactly have a lot of experience sculpting anything. And, when they're awake, their hands look very elegant and graceful and like they just have 6 fingers. And now they look like maybe where they weren't supposed to have 6 fingers. And there's just a quick little flashback to, and Kelly, correct me if any of this is wrong, but to Warren Starcoat just sort of like humming and sculpting this figure, which is kind of what you see sitting on the beach now. And he looks very pleased with himself as he's putting it together. But an outside observer would probably say that it's a little bit of a crappy job. But Warren Starcoat, being who he is, he both considers himself quite an adept artist and also would never allow anyone else to perform this undertaking on his behalf because he kind of wants all credit possible. Okay, so we cut back to Latchkey sort of inert on the beach. And so Sarsimian and Ash are playing cards, and the time passes, and when it's time for Latchkey to get up and take their watch, now the crystal next to the pink one, which is the purple one, starts to kind of dim and turn gray, and their whole body gets suffused with this purple glow. And everything kind of realigns in that cleaner, more pristine, more symmetrical order, except again, it's just a little bit different than they looked when they were pink, almost like if different artists draw the same character and there's just sort of a difference in style. It's kind of that effect. So they're a little bit leaner, and their points are a little bit pointier, and like it's very clearly the same person. And if you hadn't met them before, or if you'd met them once in passing, you wouldn't mistake them for anyone else. But if you see them on a daily basis, there's this subtle difference in exactly how they look. So they get up and they walk over to join Ash and Sarsimian and just say, if you wish to rest, we can take next watch now.
Thank you, Latchkey. Don't let that chimera keep you up too late. And then Sarsimian goes over, undoes his bedroll, gets in, takes out the Callista card, Just kind of holds it as he falls asleep.
So Latchy's going to just pick up the 2 chimera cards and kind of look at them from the front and the back and put them down again and ask Ash, were these causing a disruption?
I didn't have a problem. Just to check, so you mentioned that the deck that we found is older than the one that was being played with earlier. Are the 2 chimera cards identical, or are they 2 different designs or paintings of the same concept?
So what I mentioned is that basically these things are being new versions of the images are being created all the time. The figures remain the same, but they're regularly new. There's no standardization, right? Where this is pre-industrial, right. So just as you would see different versions of the same idea in a different set of tarot cards, similar sort of variation, right? So this is the chimera does not look exactly the same. It wasn't done by the same artist, but it is still a chimera, and It is still specifically a D&D chimera, as I said before. Right. It is a creature with a goat, a lion, and a red dragon head. But
so, for example, it wouldn't be difficult to tell which one came from the deck on the boat and which one came from the deck we opened just now.
Oh no, they also have different backing, right?
Oh right, okay.
So yeah, it's totally clear which one came from which one.
Sounds good.
Okay, so during this watch, so I'm picturing you've sort of made some camp on the beach, far enough away from the water line you're not worried about getting wet, and then far enough away from the tree line that you're not just up against it. Is that about fair?
Yeah,
makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So while you're during Lashkey's watch, while you're passing the time, some more of those white shapes, or maybe the same ones from before, you don't know. You can sort of see in the dim light from the fire, they're moving in the tree line, and one of them steps out far enough that even in the low light, because there's not a lot of contrast, and because there is a lot of contrast from the darkness, you can see what the shape is. It is the figure of a bear. It's walking on 4 paws, but it turns its face towards the fire at one point, and you can see very clearly it has a face like an owl. It has a beak, it has large eyes. But again, these are all chalk white, which you're probably both familiar with the concept of an owlbear. It's not a terribly rare creature in the Fleneus, but a conventional owlbear usually has some combination of brown and black and maybe a little bit of white in its coloration. This is purely white. So it looks towards the fire for a little while, but doesn't make any motion, doesn't come any closer.
Mm-hmm. And it doesn't really make sense for them to be white as far. I mean, the foliage is brown and green, and they kind of stick out.
Oh yes, they definitely stick out.
It's probably an eerie green glow from their pupils as the firelight's reflected.
Yeah, I mean, it's creepy as hell to look in the face of an owl in the near darkness.
Uh-huh.
So it's not creepy, but it's also not actively running at you or anything.
Mm-hmm.
Anything you want to do?
I mean, I think Latchkey would just watch them, and if it wasn't, doing anything threatening, they're not gonna do anything threatening either. Why, interrupt the truce?
It watches for a time, and then it sort of slinks back into the trees and eventually disappears again. You don't see it again that night. Okay, that's it for what I have for Latchkey's watch, and the third watch is Brother Balmo, yes?
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to play cards?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
I'll even pour a drink for myself and offer one to Ash as usual, and Ash, as usual, says,
I will happily perform the routine.
After a little while, you've settled in. Latchkey has gone back to meditating. You've had most of your cup, Balmo. This is relatively near dawn. It's not dawn yet, but we're talking maybe 4 a.m., something like that. There is a extremely bright light from over out in the water, so bright that it's pointed this way from the water, so it's difficult to see looking into it what's out there. But it appears, and then it sort of sweeps along the hull of the ship and focuses entirely on the ship. It's not paying any attention to you all. So once it's trained on the ship, it's able to see at least somewhat that there is some kind of very large. It's mostly painted black and dark red, so it's hard to make out its shape in the night. But there's something very large coming up out of the sea and towards the ship.
Whoa. Is this approximately from the direction where we last saw that dodecahedron? Just out of curiosity.
I mean, very approximately.
Okay.
Maybe. Sure.
But you said it's something painted black and red?
So the light moves towards the ship and eventually comes up out of the water. And you can see, again, because it's not paying any obvious attention to you, this is something like it looks like a construct even at this distance and in low light. I mean, it moves like a construct, right? That the movement is not perfectly fluid. It's slightly what's the word I'm looking for? It's a little bit it's very bulky, but it's a little bit jarred. It appears to be a very large metal construct in roughly the shape of trying to think of who has the reference point for what this looks like. Probably not Balmo. Maybe Ash. Yeah. It looks like some type of a shelled animal, like an arachnid or a crustacean. It has 6 legs that are just like giant sticks sticking down in the ground. Right? It doesn't have feet. They're just like they just end in points that sink down into the sand pretty deeply, and then 2 large claws at the front of it, and a tail behind it with sort of like a fin at the end, like it's designed for going in the water. Like I said, there's a light at the front of this thing, and the light is trained on the ship, and it scuttles up to the ship, and it uses the claws to start tearing at the hole in the side. By now, that's probably enough to start waking people up.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
How big is it in relation to the ship?
It is almost tall enough that it's as tall as the ship as it's beached. It is very large. It is considerably larger in scale than the Froggyhemoth was.
What the fuck?
No.
Crush, crunch, crunch, crunch.
How big are the claws?
One of the claws is big enough that if it got you in it, it would completely encompass your rib cage.
Oh.
Hey, can I make a suggestion? Fuck this noise?
It doesn't seem like it's noticed us.
That's our stuff.
Crunch.
You don't have any.
Crunch.
I'm gonna start running over there.
What?
Yeah, Balmo's gonna yell out in Supernal, "Stop that!"
The thing turns, and its body is clearly pretty flexible, so the front of it kind of turns, but the body stays mostly in place, and trains its big ass lights. You can see now that there's actually 2 of them up at the top of the thing on Balmo, since Balmo just spoke in Supernal. Balmo is basically impossible to see anything with the lights right in your face like that.
Kelly, when you say lights, what do you mean? Like are they spotlights, like how we would understand them, or are they something else?
So, for your characters, I don't know that you have a frame of reference for light like this, other than maybe something magical.
Okay.
but I mean, for us, we have lots of references for it. It would be like high beams on a car.
Okay. So it isn't like it is just like that then.
Yeah, it is
Okay.
highly directed, very bright white light, which is
Okay.
not something that normally occurs in non-magically in this context.
Gotcha.
But it would be very good for looking around underwater.
That's true. It would be very good for looking around underwater.
Oh my god.
Has it like completely halted?
It stops. It looks over at you. Is there any other action?
Latchkey might try to communicate with it telepathically. And
Okay.
they're going to ask simply, what are you doing?
This is an interesting question. Can Latchkey communicate with this thing telepathically? Latchkey experiences... Latchkey is essentially trying to reach out with their mind.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever is on the other end, it's like there's nothing there. It's the equivalent of trying to communicate with a rock. There's that's
some of my friends.
But I mean in the sense of not an animate rock, not a rock that's like full of magical life, like just a thing, just a non-entity, right? A bucket of seawater.
Sure.
There's nothing in it.
This is not alive.
Why don't we cut it there?
That's it this week for the Chimera. Our theme music is Hoof, Heart, and Hiss by Matt Weber. You can find a link to more of Matt's work in the show notes. You can also find us online at thechimera.space or on Twitter and Facebook at ChimeraPod. If you enjoy the show, please consider leaving us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or just telling your friends. Join us back here in 2 weeks for the next episode, and thanks for listening.
I am recording again. Also,
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Because I also don't have a beer.
yeah.
Yeah, who is it? Is
Well,
it just
I think
me
you're
then?
the only one that
I
found
think
us.
it's just
this
you.
time.
Oh, okay. Well, this is Balmo's Beer Corner, and I'm the only one with the with the beer. We tried to get it together with everyone having a saison / farmhouse style beer. I have another Allagash beer. Oh, what did you get? Oh.
Do you need to reselect the microphone?
What was that?
There we go. Okay. I just had to restart.
Yeah, I had to do that once too. From like wouldn't recognize my mic, and then it did again. So yay!
Yeah, that's exactly what happened to me. Just spontaneously after I saved.
Technology.
All right, so Balmoral's Beer Corner.
Oh, yes.
Balmoral's Beer Garden?
Balmo's Beer Garden? Sure, why not? I think I was hoping to find a particular farmhouse / saison beer, the Omegang Hennepin, which according to Josh was a favorite around Bard. I don't think I managed to pick up any around that time.
It was. I used to drink that with a couple of friends.
Oh, cool.
Who loved Omagong.
Yeah.
But the saison was my idea because it's one of my favorite types of beers.
Oh yeah.
and I'm sad because it has kind of disappeared from my region. The IPAs have retaken control over everything.
Oh,
And
really?
So it's tough to find anything that's not an IPA.
Yeah.
Or like cider, right? There's a lot of ciders, but nothing really in the middle.
Yeah.
So what is the flavor profile of the saison? Like, what did you like about it?
It's like it's refreshing. It's a really refreshing beer generally. It's usually got a little bit of fruit to it, or at least a fruity kind of taste. Like apples or something like that. Like there's it's not a cider, but there's like a cideriness to it. And again, the hop count is usually really low, so it's a different kind of beer. And if you're just chilling outside and it's really hot, it's a really nice beer.
Listeners, Jeff's dog just yawned on camera, and it was really cute, and he couldn't see it.
Oh, really? Oh, it was Andy.
Saisons are they're usually pretty well rounded. Tend to be a little on the stronger side too.
Named after the painter Paul Cézanne.
I did not know this.
Actually, no. No, they're called saison because they were made at the end of a season from whatever beer ingredients kind of didn't sell. So they were just the beer that they paid the farm workers with. And it was, a cheap beer, but a good strong beer as a reward. And as a result of being made from different ingredients, usually kind of varied a lot in terms of profile. But I think you hit it, Jeff, where where it does tend to be refreshing and a little citrusy. Mine tends I've got the Allagash saison, and it's a little hoppier. I'll read how it describes itself. A traditional saison with herbal highlights and a rustic dry finish, Belgian style, bottle conditioned. The Ommegang, the Tank 7 is widely available, is another good one, although none of us managed to find that one either. That's a saison, the farm workers beer.
Well, it definitely sounds like something I would like. I just wasn't able to find one.
I don't know what happened to it. There was a brief time, like a year or so ago, where I could find it almost anywhere, at least one style or one brewer, but they've all kind of dried up as far as I can tell. At least regionally here in San Diego.
Yeah, I know that there's some other beers that are of that style that don't advertise themselves as saison or farmhouse. I can't think of any of them offhand. Tank 7 I think says farmhouse, but yeah.
I have a beer called Berliner style Weiss fruit beer, which sort of sounds similar to what you're describing, but I think it might be a little fruitier, and it's almost a sour, like it's got a very tart profile.
Yeah, that might be more like there's a Weiss style beer, and that's actually kind of similar to the one we did last time, the Kolsch. Those are kind of similar profiles.
Gotcha.
Light and tending toward a little bit hoppy. Any suggestions for next time? Request?
I like lighter beers. I like sours. I like ciders. I've seen a couple ciders around that are like not apple, or like not like the traditional like stupid sweet. So one of some ciders might be interesting, just because there's a wide enough variety that everyone could.
Oh yeah,
a cider I can actually drink.
Yeah. Oh. That's another good thing. My wife Shelley has recently discovered she's gluten intolerant, and so ciders have kind of been the thing. And there's a lot more dry style ciders, or semi-dry. And there's a really good one in Salem, just a couple blocks away from us, called Far From the Tree. They do a lot of dry. They tend more dry, and they tend to include a lot of different weird things in them. They do.
Yeah.
Their big summer cider is called Lay, which is apple cider with pineapple and a little bit of jalapeno.
Oh, dang, that sounds good.
It is
That sounds
really
really
good for grilling out on the patio. So I think we might try to do some different ciders next time. How's that sound?
Yeah, we can
That sounds like fun.
discuss it in the chat, see if we can find one that we can all find.
Yeah.
Or I think we could all try a different one.
We can do that.
Mm-hmm.
Describe our ciders.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
This concludes Bummo's Beer Garden.
Yay.
Yeah.
It got upgraded.
Yeah.
Yay.
You put
Out
enough
of the
points
corner
into
and
it.
into the garden.
We're all invited.
Yeah.
All right. Gonna stop recording.
The garden grows hops.